So lately we've been looking at builds and stuff like that, benchmarks for the RTX 3050. Not bad. The 6 gig version. Doesn't require external power and all that stuff. Not a great card, but a decent card, and probably the cheapest card you can get with RTX that's actually worth something. There is a different workhorse still on the market. Doesn't have RTX, but still pretty popular. And we were taking a look at it recently too in an older build, and that's the GTX 1660. 6 gig does take power, but we'll explore. We'll see which one's better and what some advantages and disadvantages might be. So right out of the gate, the 1660, it's been around for, I believe, 5 years now. No, a little bit longer than that. Maybe 5.5, 6 years. But I believe about 2018. Anyway, if that's wrong or whatever, I'll change it on the screen. Had plenty of time to mature, and sort of like AMD's processors, a lot of these games use it. I mean, it's like fine wine. They already know what drivers and all that stuff you absolutely need to have for this. The RTX 3050 does not require external power. Does also have the same 6 gig. Does also have 6 gig of VRAM. It is probably the lowest solution you can get with RTX that's actually worth anything. You can get ray tracing solutions like AMD's RX 6400 and the A380 by Intel, but let's face it, both of those have their own drawbacks, including the bus size width and the fact that the Intel needs resizable bar, which is a limitation in, say, older builds that this may be able to take advantage of. Now, in this case, what I did is I ran these two against each other with a 12700K. That's my normal test setup. It's my editing rig over there behind me. And I just wanted to see how these two face off face to face, if you will. What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? First of all, the advantage is this 1660 is dirt cheap right now. You can find them anywhere from about $90 to $110 used on eBay. This one's going to cost you quite a bit more, somewhere in the $170 range, which if no power, no external power, and ray tracing's your gig, still might be okay, but you probably, if you can get away with a modest power supply, you may be able to get away with, say, a 2060, RTX 2060, and you can find those for not much more than you can find the 1660. The only difference in the 1660 and the 2060, they came out near the same time. The only real difference in the two is that the 2060 has ray tracing and the 1660 did not. So different flavors, different experiment, I guess, if you will, from NVIDIA. But we're not testing ray tracing in this. We just want to test the raw power of each one. So like we do with everyone, we're going to go ahead and run a couple of benchmarks, run a couple of tests. We're going to start out with Shadow of the Tomb Raider because that's where we always start out. And right away you see that there's a little bit of a hitch. There's a little bit of a, I don't know. And I left the GTX 1660 in blue here just so you could tell the difference in the two, even though Team Green is Team Green. The before mentioned card does not have ray tracing, so I left the 3050 in green. I don't know if that's going to make it easier to read through these slides, but the first thing we notice that jumps out at us is that this 1660 clearly beats the 3050, and this is both 1440 and in 1080p. So my thought when I did this is like, ooh, what is it? The extra power? Is it because it's a little bit older and drivers are more attuned to it? I can't tell you. This game also, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, is a little bit older game. It does use a pretty decent mix. It's a little bit more CPU heavy, but it does use a pretty decent mix of both. And so I thought it would be a good test. It's something that everybody's familiar with, and a lot of people play it. Or I'm not sure if a lot of people play it, but a lot of people benchmark it. Borderlands 3 was another one of these that it's common to be benchmarked because it does a variety of things, including stressing the GPU a little bit, and it often heats up GPUs a little bit. I'll give you a hint, neither one of these GPUs got warm at all. They both stayed in the low 70s. I would say high 60s, low 70s. That's not uncommon for running Borderlands. I frequently see temperatures in the low to mid 70s with no matter what card I use, unless it's a really bad card, in which case I'll see low 80s. The load on both of these was very good, but you do notice that the 3050 does show a little bit better performance now, unless it's in high. also did run this. It's got two other settings. It's got Ultra and it's got Badass above this. And I also did notice that the 1660 outperformed, though they're just not on the screen because it takes too much room on the chart, and I don't want to confuse things. But at lower resolutions, or I not to say lower resolutions, but lower detail quality, the 3050 does make a difference. Obviously, if ray tracing is your gig, there's going to be other games that we're going to try with that, just not in this video. The next game we're going to look at, of course, is Cyberpunk. Now, something about the upscaling with this. We went ahead and tested this on the default upscaling, and that happens to be AMD, the FSX 2.1. They do also have 3.0 available. You cannot select, of course, because it's not an RTX card, you cannot select DLSS on the 1660. It's just not a possibility. So I figured we're going to make it fair between the two. The default setting is FSR 2.1. We're going to leave it there, and you can kind of see the results here. The 3050 does outperform, and in some cases it's near margin of error. Other cases it's a noticeable difference. In any case, it does much better. Ultra also saw, when not listed on this screen obviously, but Ultra also did see the 3050 edging out the 1660. So again, the newer card is performing a little bit better in a more demanding, more recent title. Of course, I've got to test something like Counter-Strike. That's our esports game, right? So, but we're back to something that is highly optimized. This runs on DX11, and it favors the older card. So whether it's a matter of the 3050 not being optimized 100% to run on an older API for graphics, or the fact that this just maybe it has to do with needing power and just more power available, or it's just better at it, and I don't know. I can't explain it. But when I'm running other tests, these two cards, and when I'm doing other benchmarks and playing other games, for instance, something like No Man's Sky, these two are very, very similar. And there will be some other tests. I'm going to kind of, after the first of the year, redo how I present some of the benchmarks. And I don't think I want these great big graphs that are really, really confusing. So maybe you guys can let me know what you think about that down there in the comments. How would you like me to present the benchmarks? Would you like me to video some of the gameplay? Would you like me to show just say 1080p high and 1440 high? Or that type of thing. If you guys can leave me some feedback, I sure would appreciate it, because I've been struggling with how I want to change this, and I haven't found something that I'm satisfied with yet. But in any case, Counter-Strike being the esports title, and I have a feeling that some of these other esports titles are also going to favor the 1660, but these two cards are very, very similar in just how they react. The temperatures are very similar. When I was looking at VRAM for how much each of these games used in the VRAM, they were very similar. These games did use a variety of the onboard memory, the regular memory that's available for the system, not to be confused with the VRAM. And all these tests were run on a 12700KF with DDR4. I believe it's running 3600 and mega transfers per second. Just my standard rig back behind me. The only difference was the cards themselves. And for what they are, they're amazing. This 1660, I still continue to believe that this is, and you can find the TI and the Super versions of this also. This thing is just a workhorse. I don't know if it's ever going to die, and I hope it always, some form of this will always be out there. But obviously, you see some other cards like the 2060 and even the 3060 now trying to come into a range that's a little bit more reasonable. And of course, some of the older RTX 2000 series, like even 2070s and 2080s. One of the things I will be testing coming up will be an RTX 2070, but I think we're going to do that in our old Z440 that we've had a couple times on the channel now. I just want to see what the most I can get out of that computer is. But as far as these two, if your gig is to not have external power and you want to fit it into an older build, and you're trying to deal with like a 300 or 400 watt power supply, don't want to use adapters or something like that, this might still be a good option. If NVIDIA had an option of this and called it, say, the GTX, whatever, and we do have to kind of clarify the name a little bit, because Even though this is an RTX 3050, it's the cut down version. It's the 6 gig version with no power, as opposed to the regular desktop 8 gig version that takes external power. But if you had an NVIDIA card that was a downsize of this, maybe it didn't take external power, had the 6 gig of VRAM, and called it, I don't know, the GTX 1740 or 1750, that might be a decent thing, and it would be probably a little bit better than this, and you could probably sell it cheaper. They might start out retailing it, say 119, but then eventually the used price would drop down, and it would be something that would be very attractive after a year or so on the used market, and you could still give life to some of these older builds, these Optiplexes or business machines or whatever, that we might have to find some other operating system after 2025 for anyway. I don't know. Those are just my thoughts. I was really, really curious of how, when I saw benchmarks of the RTX 3050 that I've been testing recently and the GTX 1660 that I've also been testing parallel in another system, I thought a lot of things look similar, so I thought I would hit them head to head with each other. This, you could say, you know, ideally you test the 3050 against the 2060, the previous generation's one up, but the only difference in the 1660 and the 2060 basically is the ray tracing. So that's why I took the option of seeing it there. This would not have been a fair fight with, say, the 3050 8 gig. I think it's more a fair fight with the 6 gig toned down version. And yeah, they ended up being pretty equal. Like I said, over a number of games that I didn't benchmark here, I saw very similar numbers. So I was pretty happy with the results that came out in the benchmarks that I'm showing, and I think it's a good overall view. Anyway, if you get anything out of this video, or you're interested in either one of these cards or anything like that, or you're doing a build where, hey, maybe I will do that instead of this or this instead of that, yeah, go ahead and throw a like on the video. Leave me a comment. Tell me what your thoughts are on not only the benchmarks, how I present my benchmarking and what I might be able to do better, but what your thoughts are on these two cards. Do you have one of them or the other one, or would you buy one if you were looking for a low-cost ray tracing option? I'm not going to use this for ray tracing. I'm simply using it to fit in older builds that I can get the most out of, and it just completely blows away the RX 6400 and the A380. If you feel like going ahead and checking out the other socials, please do. Feel free to do that. I am streaming on that purple channel, and I've got another YouTube channel that I'm trying to get going and trying to get in the rhythm of. But if you don't feel like doing anything else, you don't feel like clicking like or subscribe, I would very much appreciate that. Clicking on any of the other socials or anything, just do me one favor, please. And that's be good to each other. Be kind. It costs absolutely nothing to be kind, and you have no idea what kind of impact you can make on somebody else's day. It might even make your day feel better, you know, and we all could use a little bit of cheering up sometimes. It's the holidays. Some people are going to go all out, and they enjoy this time of year, and just they get so excited and hyped up. And some of us are a little bit, I don't know, maybe a little bit less excited. But I think just reaching out and doing something nice, being kind, might help make everybody's day just a little bit better, you know. So until I get myself into something I got no business getting into, and there is a list of those things, I don't know if it's a naughty list or a nice list. But until I get to that list, that's all I got for right now. So you guys take care, and I'll see you later.